You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, not what you do.
Did you accidentally inject yourself with some kind of psychotropic agent?
Good morning, folks. Tony Caravan here. If you're expecting the usual. Yeah, that's part of it, but
Good morning.
I just wanted to say hi. That's all. And
really funny.
And start things off a little lightly. Yesterday's show kind of weird. Past couple shows have been kind of weird. The morning show. I guess I've been kind of weird the past couple days myself.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I'm not sponsored by this, but if you can make out what that is, that's what I'm drinking. That and the main brand. As I said yesterday, I'd like to teach the world brand. So today's show originally was going to be, I was contemplating, I had a horrible night of sleep. Again, I always say this since we have such a low viewership on this channel. So there's always new people coming in and checking out, and they check it out because of the graphics, title, or something like that. And you might be confused what I'm talking about, personal things first and not getting on topic, but that's how the show begins, folks. So bear with it. The whole show will be about whatever, but we're going to get through some things. So as I've mentioned, this road work outside of my studio, and the road has gotten progressively worse. So it's literally, while this is it's a neighborhood / road that's used by a lot of trucks. But the road has progressively become this bumpy road, extremely bumpy road. And for some reason, trucks travel this road, a lot of trucks, at all hours, particularly in the wee hours. And I literally could not sleep last night. Of course, I've been up. It's 5:13 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the former United States, for those of you who might be buried under 2,000 miles of ice in a government shelter after the Nova event. We'll talk about that later. It's June 15th, 2021. Let that sink in. For anybody over the age of 21. It's the year 2021. Anyway, every truck that comes by, it's it's rattling. It's as if they're, somebody's rattling heavy pots and pans and chains, and, it's just mind bending. And on top of that, to have this toothache problem that I've been going through, it just was insane. Needless to say, that meant I had a considerable amount of time being woken up numerous times during the night to contemplate what I wanted to talk about today and just what was on my mind. And I was thinking of this idea that it's a recurring theme on this show, which is about when I try to talk about, because my recent book, Codex, which opens up dealing with the hard problem of consciousness. And I talk about consciousness as the duality of our being. And you can call it the soul, the spirit, whatever. I was thinking about something called a soul seed, that's in this android body of sorts. And let me read the intro. First of all, I'm going to pull up the card, the title card from today's show. First of all, I'm going to empty the trash. You heard it. And turn off that volume so that doesn't cause any interference. And on the title card, there's this picture, and it says experiencing through consciousness. And then there's this odd picture of, it's basically kind of Alice in Wonderland, the way I read this. Well, it took me a while to put together this because I had to do some searching. I like to do original artwork for my show and title cards. And if it's not original artwork, I usually will credit where it came from. But the idea is I never really take something unless I pay for it, with the exception in the case when it is free, such as something from the National Archives. So that said, the title of this show is We're Halfway There. You could interpret that way any way you want to. Description, this way to the beach. I found this, I'm sticking with humans as already being androids of some sort. We're highly advanced self-replicating machines, some of which are seeded with souls. And originally that was like kind of the concept I was having. And then I found this lyric from a 1969 Iron Butterfly song entitled Soul Experience. And I thought it would be apropos to the conversation. So here's a little bit of that. Be yourself and live a little. Don't bother painting your face. Tomorrow it may rain and colors run. Better it quench the flower's thirst. And that was Iron Butterfly. Now, if you don't know who Iron Butterfly, they're known for Inagata Devita. Like the world, they put out an album, and that was the whole side of the album. It was like the one-hit wonder. This song isn't the greatest, but you can check it out if you want to. And links to my website can be found there as well. All right, so, and that Alice thing was, like I said, was from a National Archive. Did I mention that? That the title card was from the National Archives, The Curious Case of Alice, which was apparently was an old government like PSA type of commercial to targeted at young people to get them to not smoke, drink, or do drugs, that type of thing. You know, the classic thing. It's like the Just Say No, but this was back in like the 60s psychedelic era. And I used a nice psychedelic type called Mojo, in case you're wondering what that is. And again, that's a font I purchased. All of that said, this side of my mouth is like, it's really bothering me, and it bothered me through the night, and I used a half a tube of like Oragel 4-time whatever. That's how I feel. Cold sensitive, the whole 9 yards. Can't find a dentist. Don't know what I'm going to do. I just hope to hell I'm not going to end up with some kind of weird abscess and then end up taking off half my jaw. And I'll have this metal plate thing here. It's crazy, man. It's really crazy. So
you have actually opened the door to another dimension.
So today's show is going to be a little bit freaky.
We have discovered that the force surrounding a magnet is really an extension of mass. How shall I say it? Mass that extends into another dimension.
I wonder if William Shatner like heard that, because that's from an old Twilight Zone, or I think it's an Outer Limits. But the way he was making that voice. And of course, I could never let any reference to Star Trek or any Star Trek character go without, of course, pulling out. Captain, did you really get that thing or the way you made your voice sound from that? Not that I sound like Kirk, you know. TC out. Communicator. I finished, speaking of which, I finished binge watching Picard, Star Trek Picard. And, you know, and perhaps that was another nudge into this ongoing topic that I've had about us, about these bioelectric brains and the android body, so to speak. And they were talking, because it was that was about synths and the banning of synthetics. They call them synths, like data, and it was tied into all that. Without giving you a spoiler alert, in case you haven't seen that. And again, I'm sponsored by nothing. I don't even sell any of this stuff around me, but it's still there. But I subscribed to this Paramount Plus, and that's how I was watching Star Trek, Picard, and some other shows. And that movie Infinity was on there too, which I mentioned yesterday, which is pretty good. Yesterday's show's kind of a blur. I don't know why. And that's the legendary white handkerchief. So let's dedicate this show kind of to this idea of the soul experience, And when I say soul experience,
Funky. I
don't mean that, though I'll tell you, soul music is one of my favorite musics, and that's a whole different thing. Post-civil rights movement back in the 60s, early 70s, it just kind of puts pops the balloon of all this current day agitation, agitprop, that they're trying to do to divide people, because those of us from that era realize that, everything they're saying is wrong. Like everything is wrong. Like the shirt I was wearing, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know. You don't know. Because the people telling you the things they're telling you, forget it. But anyway, let's not get into that. We're going to go.
You're now in a different continuum than the world you're used to.
We're going to stay in this different continuum. Focus on that. So imagine that somehow, some way, these, what we call bodies, and that was a sound of gurgling carbonation. Imagine which is the body, the human body. I make no excuse for the human body, especially at 5:24 a.m. drinking carbonated beverages to get my caffeine, cold carbonated beverages. So somehow, some way, these things were created, right? And the best way to talk about it is in conventional terminology, colloquial verbiage, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to describe it. The term android is something that I think everyone can relate to, more so than robotic, because a robot, we see robot and we think more of like, I have some stuff laying around here, left over from before. Let's see if I can find it. When we think robot, most people think, okay, that's a robot, a Terminator or something. And that's not how, but when they think android, you think more of like Data from Star Trek, or in some of the more modern science fiction movies, realistic humans. And what I'm saying is I think more of humans, period. And that's why I've always talked against this transhumanist movement, because it's really, the the whole concept of it is just ridiculous. Because in other words, what they're trying to do is recreate what already exists. They're calling it, through some kind of machine. So it's the same with AI, augmented reality, artificial reality, virtual reality, transhumanism, right? People who are fear of the singularity because of those things. But the idea is that all this effort and billions of dollars that have been, continuously poured into these ventures by these people who relatively weren't cognizant and around at the time when Arthur C. Clarke was writing 2001 and that sort of thing. And some of the other great science fiction writers, of course, who date back to the 19th century. But you have this human body, which is a self-replicating android with a bioelectric brain, right? And modern science talks about research is, I should say, as my book, Codex, which you should read and get. It's available on Amazon. They talk about the hard problem of consciousness. They openly accept this, that the brain does not, as far as they can figure, does not give way to consciousness. And consciousness, another word for consciousness for some people is the soul. Another word for the soul or consciousness to other people is like the spirit, right? So they're interchangeable for practical purposes and for the purpose of this discussion. And so let's call it the soul today instead of consciousness, because that's what we've been referring to it for so long. And not to get into a religious discussion. That's not what this is. All right? We're talking about the soul, what we all consider the soul. And again, it's not
funky,
necessarily, but it is funky. It's a funky thing. So, how does the soul merge or become a part of this android? And as I said in the past previously, that I don't believe that every human android walking on this particular planet, which by the way is not our planet. The natural species, the primary life form on this planet is the flora, meaning the trees, plants, flowers, fungi. And fungi play a very important role because they're kind of the neural network of, the flora. And I've talked about it before. They could span distances unimaginable by the average person, literally interconnecting over distance of, considering the United States, various states. And they let the trees and other plants and things in the soil know what's necessary. It's like even things like, I was telling someone the other day, things like the common dandelion that people find in their yard serves a higher purpose. People wonder why they have a lot of dandelions. Another person may not have a lot of dandelions in their yard. Well, there's multiple purposes of a dandelion. One is if there's very tight soil, A dandelion serves a purpose to loosen up that soil. It also provides nutrients through its leaves, the decay of its leaves, so the soil is weak and it provides that nutrient. It's also one of the earliest flowering plants. People refer to it as a weed. So it's an early provider of pollen for bees, which are essential to life on this planet and flora. So it serves a purpose. And when that purpose is completed, you will find that at a time when you had an overwhelming amount of dandelions in your lawn, that progressively you will find less and less. And people who try to pick them out and dig them out and do all that stuff, that's not the answer. That's not how you get rid of dandelions. Dandelions serve a purpose. The flora on this planet, which is not ours, we're on this planet. In effect, we're planted here, all right? We just don't know how. You know, some scientists believe in something called transpermia. We somehow came here from space. Obviously, various religions believe we were placed here by God. Others believe we somehow were created by the organic matter that existed on the planet. And others believe we were brought here or somehow by aliens or adapted and messed with through our DNA wise, whatever, by aliens. And it's just 4 examples of what people actually believe. The 2 predominant ones would be the theory that Darwin put forward, which is still a theory, and the other would be the religious idea of creationism. But the other idea, which I refer to sometimes when I say, humans are nothing more than CO2 exhalers to provide CO2 for the plants and the trees, which are the predominant form of life on this planet. It's their world, not ours. No saving the planet. It's their planet, okay? And we're fertilizer, ultimately, for them as well. That's what a human is. And that doesn't sit well with a lot of people to find out, especially the narcissists and the ruling elite and, people that just are full of themselves. The colonial man, who is the real enemy of everything that is good on this planet. Colonial man. If you think about it, throughout history. Conquest. Conquistadors, even the missionaries, in that sense. Anyone that was colonizing felt that they needed to change something to fit their view, right? So-called people who wanted to bring civilization to others. All right. Well, I'm not going to take any position on any of that stuff. These things that we have to put into our head. So, the background, we're painting the canvas. So let's get back to this idea of you. Who are you? What are you? Now, when I say you to some people, and pardon me, the white handkerchief is a staple. Nothing I can do about that. It's either a factor of nonstop talking at 5:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's because of my age and ailments, perhaps. Or it's just natural. I don't know. But it's going to occur. So when I say you, there's two yous out there. One is the android that's operating with a bioelectric brain. Okay, you're a functional unit. You're not a synthetic because you weren't created in that sense of at least from a science fiction, say Star Trek Picard sense, or even Westworld, which would be another example, an older example. You've seen that HBO series. Not so. See, there's this idea that man, as in mankind, let's not get caught up in these pronouns and triggered by words and references to whatever. Okay. Man and machine. And that man creates things, and everything that man creates is some kind of machine, right? Unless it actually messes with biology. And there's a lot of that going on. And of course, the scariest thing that's going on right now is, gain of function, right? But this has nothing to do with that. But it does in a way. There's a passage in the Bible right before the Noah's Ark story. And it's pretty scary. And it somehow ties into it. I'm half tempted to look it up, but I don't want to necessarily mess up my, my video in the sense of the more I use the processor, even though this is a good processing machine, it seems that this technology, this primitive technology on the part of the system outside of my computer that's accepting this has a problem with it gets overwhelmed easily. But look into that. So there's two yous. So the you that has a consciousness, that's you in the first person. And when people today, scientists, academics, refer to the hard problem of consciousness, what they're talking about is they don't understand how the you in the first person perceives the world, what that is, and what brings rise to that, and how that is somehow connected to the physical brain. Okay. And then there's the other you that I'm talking to, and that people in the media, social media, all media, and politicians, and the corporatocracy I refer to, and the international crime syndicate, all of these nefarious forces that want to do things, school administrators that want to indoctrinate children, condition people, the propagandists, all of those people, right? People with agendas, right? The ruling elite. All right, those people, they target the you that is the biological brain, the bioelectric brain of this android body. It's programmable, okay? And they know how to program you. Now you, and I'm talking to you droids out there, okay? You're simply unaware of it. You don't know that you're programmable. It seems ridiculous. You know, you've read, you know, your religious books. You've studied science, right? You've seen, maybe you've had children. You know, you've seen the biological world, as you call it, and you say, "What do you mean, android? I mean, we're animals, or we're living beings, we're whatever." And it's yeah, you're a self-replicating biological unit. You're a machine. See, I talked about this before when I try to refer to higher civilizations that have existed in the past, distant past, prior to these various catastrophes, you know, these extinction events that occur, you know, with regularity, say every 12,000 years. And you have to understand that you can have a higher civilization. You can have life without technology. That's not to say that in our era, present day, that there's something wrong with technology and, you know, we should eliminate technology or something. No, I'm coming to you using technology, right? I embrace technology pretty much, probably more than most. I don't rely on it in a sense of it's the centerpiece of my life. For example, the smartphone to me is merely a tool. My smartphone is sitting here. It's actually turned off. It's been turned off since yesterday. I have no chip in it. I have no cell service. I use Wi-Fi calling on it occasionally when I go somewhere or I'm around the house, and I can get email through it. And there's one or two apps I might use, for example, to order something or to track something. That's about it. So, but I embrace the technology as something that our civilization has created. You know, the computer is our way, right? The television, you know, whatever you want to call it, is, you know, is a device that we use to communicate, entertain ourselves, educate ourselves, etc. But that's not to say that that's the only way in which humankind, to satisfy some of those who don't like me saying the word man, it's not to say that's the only way that civilization can have risen and has risen in the past to a high level of sophistication, and maybe even beyond where we are now, and most likely beyond where we are now. Because it's not the physical machine, the parts, the metals, you see, the plastic, you know, the wiring, the silicon chips. That's just one way of producing what people call technology, or how to do certain things and create certain tools, or things that assist a society in achieving its goals. But there are other ways. And one of the greatest things that exists, and I'm going to cover this in a couple of different ways. You know, this isn't a simplistic issue, but I'm hoping I could, like, this show can be all inclusive And I think I have enough time to do it. First, we're talking about civilization. Okay. But second, let's not forget the idea of the planet and the flora. In other words, that the trees and the flowers, right, and the fungi are perhaps, and not even perhaps, but in my estimation, the primary life form on this planet. And it's their world. It's not our world. We're placed here either way. Or we've come up or have been created through that, ecosystem. So there's the two yous out there, not two of you, but the two yous. And one is, there are people out there, which I personally believe right now, currently on this planet, there are nearly 8 billion people. 8 billion. Imagine that. And I believe most of those 8 billion people are soulless, all right? Are not conscious. They don't have a consciousness. Now you say, well, how could they be? Are they unconscious? No, it's what we refer to commonly as the subconscious mind. But it's not the mind, it's the subconscious brain. And it's not even the subconscious, it's just your brain. It's your bioelectric brain. Okay? That programmable part of you, that that jello mold inside your skull. All right? And you have all your senses are connected and processed through that unit. And it's a programmable unit. And you go through your life and you have thoughts and you do things and you feel you have free will. And you listen to me right now and say, this guy's a nutbag because whatever else he's going to say doesn't really matter because, I'm doing what I want to do. Screw him. Yeah. That's what you would think if you were a programmed android. All right? You're functioning in this world. You're a CO2 emitter and fertilizer. You go about your day. You're like, you wear the Beau Brummel business suit, or you do some other kind of function in society. You have goals to be, wealthy, to live in some kind of big house. In one way, shape, or form, you're basically food for something else, okay? You're either what I call, and have called repeatedly, you're either cattle for the ruling elite. I mean, literally. Okay? Or you're fertilizer that emits CO2 while you're living, and then you're fertilizer for the trees and plants. And everything you do in between that is just meaningless. Yeah. And you're programmable, so you serve those masters. Now, if you serve, it's like a Dylan song, you're going to serve somebody, right? Now, in the instance of the trees, I find nature, the natural world, so to speak, to be a much better master of sorts, all right, if you have to call them masters, you know, because at least their agenda is not nefarious, all right, and your freedom and your ability to experience those that it seems those closer to nature seem to be more at peace and appreciate the beauty of the planet. And the natural world. Did you get your morning show mug yet? No. Now, the conscious, when I talk about the soul experience, the consciousness person, the person with consciousness, with a soul. Now, that individual, the you, that you take all of this input, this data from this android body, right? It's just a biological unit. It doesn't have to be created like a Westworld or a Star Trek or a sci-fi android. Okay? I mean, that's not the thing. You have to get technology out of your head when you think on this level. All right? The idea of mechanics. All right? An advanced civilization, which may be even trees, may be flora. All right? Flora, which is all encompassing that living things that breathe in that beautiful CO2 that the powers that be are trying to demonize. See, you know, this is an exact example of how that the very people that talk about they want to save the planet, the environmentalist type of people, that they are demonizing CO2, which is the primary, the most important. It's literally the air that the flora, the trees, the flowers, the plants, the crops breathe. It's the air they breathe. That's what CO2 is. And they're trying to demonize it. Imagine that. That is the conditioning. That's the indoctrination. That's the programming of this soulless android. And that's how, and the continuous propaganda that they have done, that they have convinced people of this. Here's this planet that you're fortunate enough to be on. All right, this beautiful world, okay, where you have unlimited possibilities, right? And there are several thousand people trying to convince 8 billion people, right, that the very thing that the planet needs to survive, CO2, is a bad thing. Imagine that. How, you know, it's actually hard to comprehend. And you know, they've done this over, you know, centuries and millennia, really. This idea of paving over, right? Growth. I mean, just look at Manhattan. All that's left is Central Park. I mean, at least we got that there. All right? But it's all streets and buildings, concrete and steel and glass and asphalt, right? And machine, right? There's no things that there are no need for. And these things don't work in harmony with the planet. They clash. Right? And if these people have their way, they would just pave over the whole place. You know. Transhumanism, transformation of the planet into a Borg cube or something. It's a science fiction reference. And so that's the first part where everything you know is wrong comes in. Now, those of us with consciousness, right, who accept the idea that you don't know what you don't know. So that's the first thing we have to. You have to humble yourself in that regard. You have to say, I don't know what I don't know. We can pretend that we know things. There are certain things that are mysterious, all right, and that we may discover, or that the answers are out there, but they're being hidden from us, like in the Vatican archives or someplace, or like I always say, in private collections of these colonialists, the people during the great ages of exploration acquired and discovered these things, and now they're in back rooms of museums or in private collections of these European colonialists. But be that as it may, it doesn't really matter. As a conscious person, you have an ability to supersede the programming of the bioelectric brain. And sometimes it's not obvious. You have to step back and consider it. You have to contemplate this and think about it. Why am I doing this? Why am I living my life this way? What's the goal here? You see? I mean, in the basic thing, just to cut to the chase, spoiler alert, life is a soul experience on this planet. And so we're placed on this planet of flora, right? Gaia, the planet Earth, the planet of trees and flowers, fungi, right? The neural network that connects this world, right? And we're placed here, and it's a soul experience. And we occupy these biological units. When this soul experience is complete, some believe in some cases, it's repeated. That's the reincarnation type of folks. Believe that this soul is like recycled in a sense. And others believe that the soul consciousness returns to the ultimate consciousness, right? The one. Or transcends or moves to another astral plane, another dimension, right? Some sort of different level of vibration or whatever have you. There's all these kinds of things. But remember, you don't know what you don't know. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know what none of us knows. Okay? So you don't know what you don't know. If you go to TonyCaravanLive.com, I have a shirt. You don't know what you don't know. You've seen me wear it sometimes on this show. Get it. Put that in front of people. Let them people see you walk around. It's a short sleeve, very comfortable shirt. Wear it. Wake people up. The idea is like shake people's brains. So like I say, without getting caught up and getting freaked out, excuse me, let's explore all these possibilities. So let's say that the highest intelligence on this planet is the flora, or are the flora, are the trees. They're older than we are. They have longer lifespans. They reproduce themselves. If you hear a lot of noise in the background, I think there's a garbage truck outside my front window, the studio window. Apologize for that. It's either that or there's a jet aircraft carrier or jet aircraft driving down the street. I don't know. I don't know what that is. It's very loud in my ears, but it's not in my headphones, but it's not as loud outside. Okay, so, perhaps they created us. They being the trees. When you fly around, one of the things that is, puzzling today is that when I see a lot of angry, protesting people, people on the streets, and even people who go to rallies, believe in the politics of pop culture and cult of personality, and they get caught up in all of these issues, meaningless issues, really, because they have nothing to do with life and living. They're very petty issues. That may offend some people, but they're, in the grand scheme of things, what do they really have to do with life on Earth? Right? And your eternal soul, your consciousness, your happiness, right? The human experience, the soul experience, right? Nothing. They're cyclical things that people who like to program the bioelectric brain use to manipulate and control the androids who have no souls, the soulless. Listen, I have a song called Robots, and it goes something like this.
The soulless millions who wander aimlessly around the streets. Dressed as they should, believing what they've been told, doing what they think is right.
The soulless millions wandering the streets. Programmed, doing what they think's right, dressing the way they should dress. Happiness to them is a dopamine hit in the brain, right? The pleasure center. They don't understand true happiness, or those pursuing a life of technology, robots, as opposed to those with consciousness, that see life as a soul experience and see the beauty of nature and take the input from our senses, our five senses: touch, hearing, sight, smell, taste, and live a full life of experience. And they seem to be more in touch with the beauty of this world and the beauty of nature and the natural order of things, and live at a higher level of existence. That's why I say in previous civilizations, people didn't have to rely on technology. And as I've often said, the happiest you've ever been has not been due to technology. And I'll reiterate that because it's a very important thing that is hard for many people to comprehend. Those who have never experienced the exaltation, right, true happiness, don't understand this, or they can't relate to it because their whole life has been surrounded by the technology, indoctrination, conditioning, and they live with a programmed brain. So they can't understand the idea of lying in bed, making love with someone, being naked, and having an orgasm, and staying in bed, and having no technology under those whatever thread count sheets. Okay. And relaxing, not just there for some sex acts or friend with benefits type of nonsense, but love, or the beginnings of love, or feelings of love, right? And to be able to remain there and just either be quiet, embrace, talk with one another. Time passes quickly. Hours go by with no technology. Pure happiness, right? Soul experience. No need for a smartphone. No need to turn on the TV, right? No need to look at a clock. It's a Sunday. Got nowhere to go, right? No need to ask Alexa a question. Okay? Pure soul experience, the sharing of two conscious beings in touch with their full senses, sharing them, intertwining. All right? That's one example. And that's a physical, sexual example. But a spiritual one, a soulful one. But there are other examples that don't involve that. I myself have a beautiful yard that I've created. I say I created, I am more of a caretaker of it because this planet isn't mine. This planet is theirs, right? So I've nurtured these trees, plants, crops. It's not a big yard. And I have my little space that I've carved out with my chair, reclining chair, my music, And on a sunny day, I recline on my chair. I dug a little pond so the birds can get, and has a little solar fountain in it. It's a tiny little thing. It's actually quite primitive, and it has some kind of leak in it. It's not the greatest thing in the world. I did my best, but I'm no professional, fountain maker, pond creator. And I've got a bird feeder, and birds come, and birds eat I buy bird seed, and I feed those birds. And they hang out there, and then they go to the fountain for a drink, the pond. And on a sunny day, like yesterday was early on, yesterday, after my show, I lay back in my lounge chair. It was a dry day. We've had rain previously, but it was dry. But the sun was hot. It was like, well over 80 degrees back there. And I lay there with my eyes closed. I was listening to some classical music on my outdoor speakers that I've set up in stereo. And sometimes I listen to other music. I listen to all kinds of music. I could be listening to jazz, rock, alternative, country, classical, whatever the mood is. And I think that's important, to have a soul experience. Experience all there is. Be open to things, not to have tunnel vision. So yesterday I laid back in this chair, closed my eyes, felt the heat of the sun absorbing the vitamin D, the UVB rays into my skin that were helping improve my immune system, activating many things within my body while I'm listening to this music, eyes closed, as I said, on a lounge chair, and I could be anywhere on this planet. I could be on a beach on some island. I could be on the seashore on either coast. I could be on a rooftop of some overpriced penthouse building. Or I could be in my own backyard, in which case I was. I was having this soul experience of beauty, surrounded by the natural world, listening to the natural world. I didn't have headphones on, see. I was listening, there was classical music, but I could also hear the chirping of the birds, the sound of the water from the solar fountain hitting the pond. And I was immersed in that. It was a beautiful soul experience. Some people hike out, in mountains, various trails, or just go to parks. Other people go to museums, look at fine art. Other people create art. Musicians jam together. People go to see concerts. People do all kinds of things. Some of those things, there's some technology there because that's our society. But in many cases, it's minimal technology. Right? The technology is not necessarily key to the happiness, to the full experience of that moment. Like someone goes out on a picnic or whatever, walking a dog. Reading a book, traditional book. I mean, the list goes on, and you can think of all of these things. And the idea there is that 36,000 years ago, there could have been a civilization that rose higher than we, because we certainly are not a high civilization. constantly at war with each other. You know, over the past 12,000 years, since the last catastrophic event, near extinction event on this planet, there have been almost endless wars. Technologies have been created mostly to benefit the warriors. And then they were adapted for civilian purposes. And what do we see now? Politics has risen to the center of people's lives. It's become the pop culture. Not like the summer of love, right? No. This isn't a high civilization. This is a controlled, manipulated civilization. This is several thousand people, what I call the Davos set, the World Economic Forum, trying to rule over 8 billion people on the planet, but worse, trying to rule over the planet, the natural life form of the planet. And what have we accomplished? Someone will say, oh, we've built machines that have beat the best Go player on the planet. We have smartphones we can carry around with us. We're working on self-driving cars. We've done nothing. We've done nothing to enhance the human spirit, improve the human condition, really. The Romans had running water and toilets, multi-story buildings, right? 2,000 years ago. You know, the human condition was just fine. They had fruits and crops and all that stuff. They also had wars, but we have wars. They weren't a higher civilization than we were because they're part of this whole mess. People just don't see this in their pursuit of the day-to-day, the rat race. Because they don't have souls. They're programmed androids. Or if they have consciousness, the consciousness is atrophied. It's a sad situation when you think about it. So, what's the purpose of even talking about all this? Well, it's to try to wake up the people that have consciousness to say, hey, if you're allowing your bioelectric brain that you're occupying to be programmed, that you need to snap out of it and realize that you're in charge of this unit, this biological unit, and that there's this soul experience to be had. That's your purpose to be here. And there's so much you can do. And that paying attention to these petty things that are being thrust before you is foolhardiness and a waste of time and a waste of your life. And if you're just a biological unit without consciousness, perhaps a little self-discovery is in order. And maybe there's a possibility that you can transcend, being a robot. But the idea, no matter what the case may be, is that you have to really get in tune with this idea of a soul experience. And you have to kind of detach yourself as much as possible from the daily bombardment of propaganda, indoctrination, and being conditioned and programmed to act a certain way, believe certain things. They're just simply not important. They're not important to your life. I mean, and I could take it to another level, or your eternal soul. Just not important. It's those that want to control you, to manipulate you, that place these things in the foreground of your bioelectric brain. They make these things seem important, but they're not important. They're not going to give you true happiness. And when you finally reach that point at the end of this existence, excuse me, what do you have? Money? Things? You can't take them with you. No. You will have nothing and you will be happy. That's one of the slogans of the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum. The likelihood of people even being able to pass down things to their offspring is looking more and more unlikely in the coming decade or so. So it's a fool's errand the way we're living our lives right now as a society. And it's so easy to break away from that. Simplify your life. Don't be so caught up in issues. What do issues have to do with happiness? Those that are pushing the issues, they never seem to do anything about them. We've talked about that in the past, right? They're very good at pitting people against each other and calling out certain things and saying, oh, there's an injustice here, or this area is, these people in that area are treated poorly. But the kind of people who are saying that are the very people who are the people involved in gentrification of poor neighborhoods that push the poor out. The very people that are saying that have basically ruled over or allowed cities, inner cities, slums, and areas like that to exist for decades and decades and decades and have done nothing. They have a good talk, make some good speeches, and people believe them. But it's just talk. Haven't changed anything. The powers that be are two sides of a counterfeit coin. One side's been in power for 8 years, another side's in power for 8 years, another side's in power for 4 or 8 years. Just goes back and forth. Decades and decades have passed. But they haven't done anything to improve the quality of life for the people they pretend they represent. They throw them some bones here and there. They make have some photo ops with the 1 or 2 people that they prop up and say, hey, look what we did here. But the millions and millions of others They've done nothing for. You know, what good is transhumanism and all this technology if 650,000 people die every year of heart disease? If 600,000 people die every year of cancer, and hundreds of thousands die of all these other diseases that if they put the money they were putting into technology that's useless technologies, if they put it into it, these things all could be cured or treated. Things like diabetes and all of this. And why do so many people commit suicide? Why are so many people finding their only release is by doing drugs that alter their state of being so they don't have to deal with the real world? And why is it that people can't see this when it's blatantly obvious? You know, that's the thing. It's bizarre. It doesn't make any sense. To me, anyway. To those of us who are conscious, right, who are resist the programming, are immune to their propaganda, to their indoctrination, to their conditioning. And we see it as absurd. Life is a full, beautiful soul experience that anyone can have. You can't snap your fingers and change things overnight. You know, like anything else, it takes some thought, consideration, contemplation. It takes some time. But you have to ask yourself, are you truly happy? And do you really think that this rat race pursuit of wealth, living in such and such a neighborhood, having so many bright and shiny objects and this, that, the other, that's going to make you happy, get you the girl, get you the guy, right? Make your life full and complete? No. If that were true, there wouldn't be so many suicides among the wealthy and the entertainers and politicians and everyone else. Anger on the streets and protests, right? If all that worked, because they've been doing this for decades now. And it's the same old issues. And it's pitting one against the other. And it's the blame game. It's scapegoating. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. Goes back not only centuries, but millennia. Scapegoating one group of people or pitting one against the other, right? Divide and conquer. Do you really want to be a part of that? Do you really want to allow yourself to be a pawn of some ruling elitist that doesn't care about you, that literally lives in a breakaway civilization, can't even comprehend your lifestyle, what your day-to-day is like? Someone living in a multi-million-dollar gated community, doorman building, getting driven around with limos or SUVs with drivers, having vacations at luxurious resorts that you couldn't even afford if you tried to max out your credit card. That's how exclusive they are. People who the rules don't apply to, but who make the rules for you. Right? Like I said a few shows back, the Constitution giveth, and the terms of service taketh away. Excuse me. Yeah. I mean, that's the way it is. You know it in your heart of hearts. You can't deny it. It's the way it is. It's a generalization, but it's a generalization, like most generalizations, is that it's generally true. There's exceptions to everything, of course. But that's not the way it's presented to you. Break away from the media. Get off of social media. Just live life. It's a beautiful experience awaits you. A beautiful soul experience. A full life. Everything you know is wrong, and you don't know what you don't know. And they're never going to tell you the truth. It's not in their interests. Their interest is to treat you like cattle. All right? Or a pawn. This is neo-feudalism that we're heading into right now. The return of the king system. These people promise the world, but they never deliver. 20,000 people in the U.S. die every year from homicides. They don't post that number on the TV screen. Like I said, 1.2 million people a year now, not just like when a thing comes along and it spreads, like we had last year and it's kind of phasing itself out now. Now, every year, 1.2 million people die of heart disease and cancer. Every year, 1.2 million. That means in the last decade, 12 million people died, and nothing's been done to it about it. And the corporatocracy, which is big pharma and big tech, the people who profit on these things, I don't know. They're worrying about beating some guy who could play a game called Go, creating some kind of artificial intelligence or VR headset so you could have some kind of like full experience. Well, what kind of immersive experience exists when you just put something on your head? If you want to have an immersive experience, basically break away from all this bull and just immerse yourself in the real world. Communicate with another person. Find somebody of similar interest. Conversation. Use your senses to their fullest potential. Experience life. Have a soul experience. Well, I'm not going to let this drag on too long. It's going to be shorter than most of my videos. I'm trying to eventually phase these down to about 1 hour because I had been going 2 hours. This one ran a little bit over an hour. Well, an hour, almost an hour and a half. But anyway, I hope I got through to you, made some points, and we'll see how it goes. I'm still trying to figure out this whole thing and whether or not it's something that's working and getting through to people or not. I mean, I'm trying to do my service to others instead of service to self. I don't profit on any of this stuff. I write these books, I have these songs, but nobody seems to buy them, so I'm not making any money on any of this stuff. It's just me trying to share some insights. Hopefully those who've watched this and will watch this in the future will get something out of it. All the best. Good morning. And I'll talk to you perhaps tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. Take care.